Good morning, and thank you all for giving us some time out of your day. The three organizations you see standing in front of you today, the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee, Palestine Legal, and the Council on American Islamic Relations, have all been involved in protecting students and their right to protest prior to the events of last fall. However, as many of you saw, starting last fall and then culminating in the spring, university administrations targeting students for protesting against genocide escalated significantly. So these three groups are here to talk about that issue as students begin to return to campus. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have my colleague Dylan Sabah, who is staff attorney for the Palestine Legal, speak first, and then Chris Godshall Bennett, who is legal director of American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, will then speak, and then I will wrap up the press conference. Each of them will say and spell their names for you as they come to the podium. So I will turn the podium over to Dylan.
Thank you, Corey, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming down, and thanks for folks who are tuning in remotely. My name is Dylan Sabah, that's D-Y-L-A-N-S-A-B-A, and I'm a staff attorney at Palestine Legal. Palestine Legal is a nonprofit legal organization that responds to attacks on the Palestine Solidarity Movement. Each year, we respond to hundreds of such requests for help, and the vast majority of these come from institutions of higher education. For years, university administrations, under pressure from donors and outside lobby groups, have sought to suppress Palestine advocacy on their campuses. Oftentimes, in doing so, they violate federal laws that include Title VI of the Federal Civil Rights Act, the First Amendment for public universities, and other laws as well. Since the start of Israel's genocide of Palestinians in Gaza last fall, the repression on higher education campuses has gotten much, much worse. And instead of hundreds of requests for help, we've received thousands just since October of last year alone. What are these requests for help? So what are students coming to us for? Well, university administrations have condemned their own students for demanding a ceasefire. We've seen universities allow outside actors onto their campuses to dox and harass students with impunity. We've seen universities ban entire student groups, and not just Palestinian groups, although they have banned Palestinian groups, but Jewish groups and other allied groups as well, merely for engaging in protected political expression, demanding an end to the genocide and an end to U.S. support for Israel. We saw that escalate over the course of the fall and the beginning of the spring. But then later in the spring, things turned violent. After months of repression and being ignored by their administrations, students set up encampments to demand a ceasefire and end to their university's complicity in genocide. Administrations responded with full force, calling in police departments to attack and brutalize students and arrest them, and not just students, but faculty and staff members as well. The scenes were horrendous and shocked the nation. And then, to add insult to injury, these same administrations brought absurd student conduct charges against these students, suspending them en masse and giving them other sanctions as well. Let's be very clear. This is not only morally wrong in the face of the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza, it's a profound embarrassment for these universities that pretend to support free expression and political engagement. In many years, I predict that these same universities will speak with pride about the activism of their students during this war. We've seen it happen time and time again. But when it matters in the here and now, they remain committed to silencing dissent and protecting the interests of the powerful against the righteous anger of the many. It's time for that to end, and for institutions of higher education to join their students on the right side of history. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Chris Godshall Bennett. That's C-H-R-A-S G-O-D-S-H-A-L-L hyphen B-E-N-N-E-T-T. Sorry, that's a mouthful. I'm the legal director at the American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, and like my colleagues up here, we've been supporting students prior to October, but especially in the months since October. We have supported students at GW, which is one of the schools we're going to talk about today, along with other students across the country. We've seen this really disturbing phenomenon of students being leveled with extreme disciplinary charges, that's even excluding when police are brought, that are often resulting in expulsions from housing or evictions, the loss of access to dining, the loss of access to their financial aid prior to any hearing at which they could provide evidence, supporting their, non-responsibility for any particular, putative code of conduct violation. To be clear, what these students are actually doing is exercising what is a celebrated right in the United States on university campuses to stand up for their moral convictions and demand an end to the genocide and their university's complicity in it. GW has been a particularly brutal example that we've been involved with. Students were sort of summarily brought before student conduct panels with their access to their housing revoked prior to any hearing. And it was very clear during the process that GW had no intention of really doing anything other than punishing these students. GW has refused to provide transparency into their investments, which is really all the students were asking for, and to end any investments that are contributing to the genocide and the occupation of Palestine. When universities have not gone it alone, including GW, they have collaborated with law enforcement to brutalize their students. We have seen examples across the country, including at the University of Texas at Austin, which ADC is investigating, with students tackled by 4 or 5 police officers for literally standing on the lawn because they're associated with either Palestinian identity, with the protest, or honestly just walking to class, and they just happen to be caught up in the protest. The response has been, it really shocks the conscience, and it flies in the face of anything that these universities purport to stand for. Columbia comes to mind as well. I was an undergraduate student at Columbia. One of the things that they always advertised to us was the pride they had in the 1968 protests. And they used that to advertise for their students to come and engage in their beliefs and to exercise their rights there. Like Dylan said, I suspect that those same universities will use this as an example of that in future years. But for right now, they are doing everything in their power to suppress their students, who are the beating heart of American solidarity for Palestine. So ADC continues to support these students. We continue to support students in disciplinary actions, in the hearings before their universities. And we continue to investigate these police responses because these students deserve not only accountability for what they experienced this last year, but universities need to understand that they cannot repeat these horrific actions as students begin to gather in campuses again and re-begin what we expect to be, just as large, if not larger, protests as the genocide continues. So thanks for your time. I really appreciate you guys having me here.
Good morning again. Corey Saylor, CoreySaylor. I am the Research and Advocacy Director at the Council on American Islamic Relations. We have mailed copies of this report to 600 university administrators. Physical copies, we then re-emailed them this morning. We also published an op-ed in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution talking about our designations of universities as institutions of particular concern, and we are emailing that to staff at those universities as we speak. We have other items on our list of things that we plan to do as we roll out our Unhostile Campus campaign. But for today, American history teaches us to follow the lead of young people. Young people spoke out clearly against the brutal war in Vietnam. Young people protested and pushed their universities to divest from South African apartheid. Today, students call for an end to occupation and apartheid and condemn the role of places of higher education in funding weapons of war. As campuses welcome back students, we should celebrate and protect such students, not focus on harsh punishments for protesters. Since last fall, the Council on American Islamic Relations has documented an unprecedented wave of anti-Muslim hate in the United States. We've noted that students have been subjected to doxing, administrative punishments, and career-ruining threats from potential employers. As we saw this spring, when people feel unheard, they will protest. In generation after generation, popular protest has achieved important social change. That's ending child labor, ending school segregation, increasing environmental standards, and workplace safety. In April and May, students across the country took part in this long American tradition of civil disobedience to protest their university's involvement in Israeli apartheid, occupation of Palestinian land, and genocide of the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. According to researchers at Princeton University, 95% of the demonstrations occurring between October 7th and May 12th were peaceful, with, quote, no reports of encampment protesters engaging in physical violence or destructive activity, end quote. Still, rather than engage in conversation with student protesters, multiple university leaders have censored voices calling for Palestinian human rights and weaponized university policies with the seeming intent of suppressing free speech and the tradition of academic freedom. Among the most egregious incidents occurred at the George Washington University, the University of California, Los Angeles, and Emory University, where students not only reportedly experienced racial, religious, and ethnic discrimination from pro-Israel voices, but were also targeted by their own university administrations for participating in anti-genocide protests. For GW, George Washington University here in Washington, D.C., this targeting apparently predates last fall. As a result, today, we designate George Washington University, the University of California, Los Angeles, and Emory University as institutions of particular concern, due to their creation of a hostile campus environment for Palestinian, Muslim, Arab, Jewish, and other students, faculty, and staff who have opposed the genocide and occupation of the Palestinian people. These three institutions have set the standard for creating a thoroughly hostile, dangerous environment for anti-genocide students, faculty, and staff. For students considering these universities, we urge you to look at other institutions where free speech and academic freedom are respected values and not just empty words. Everyone knows these three universities are just the tip of the iceberg. Today is about calling attention to the issue. In the coming weeks, we fully expect to designate many more universities and colleges. Now, why these universities? In 2015, George Washington reportedly threatened disciplinary action against a Palestinian student after he hung a flag from his dorm window. The university later apologized and claimed that it had been acting in compliance with a university policy, even though others had reportedly hung other flags outside their windows without issue. GWU, which came under federal investigation for Title VI violations for anti-Palestinian activities, suspended its chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine in November 2023, and then reportedly targeted its student leaders. In May, the university authorized law enforcement to destroy the anti-genocide protest encampment, during which police trashed students' Islamic materials, including prayer mats and English translations of the Holy Quran. Unrelated to events since last fall, but another marker of apparent Islamophobia pervading George Washington University In April, the university was sued due to alleged activities by a top faculty member who, quote, is connected to numerous anti-Muslim think tanks in the United States and Europe and has published in various anti-Muslim outlets, unquote, according to reporting from Georgetown University. At UCLA, police reportedly launched flares, shot rubber bullets, and gassed student protesters in the student-led sit-in established on campus. One day before that attack, police had stood by for hours while pro-Israel counter-protesters allegedly beat peaceful students with poles and wooden boards, shot fireworks at the encampment, and allegedly threatened to murder and rape UCLA students. At Emory, Muslim and Palestinian students had for months reported that they had been the target of racist remarks from students, faculty, and affiliates, while administrators justified the harassment by reportedly telling students that when they say "Free Palestine," a call for Palestinian human rights, quote, they are associating themselves with terrorism, unquote. In April, Emory leadership authorized the use of tasers, tear gas, and rubber bullets against student protesters and other affiliates to dismantle a peaceful sit-in. In May, the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights opened an investigation into the university following a complaint by CAIR Georgia and our colleagues at Palestine Legal. To conclude, the only thing that will stop the protests is actually listening to people's concerns and then addressing them in a meaningful way. That is what good, effective leaders do, and it's how we come together and move forward as a country. As a result of their leadership's creation of a hostile campus environment for Palestinian, Muslim, Arab, Jewish, and other students, faculty, and staff opposing the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza, we are designating the George Washington University, the University of California, Los Angeles, and Emory University as institutions of particular concern. More to come on that. We appreciate everyone listening to our remarks. If we have any questions, we're happy to take them. Please, sir.
Yeah, I have a question. You talked or alluded to due process not being involved in this perfunctory dealing with students. Is that something that you're going to raise an issue with moving forward?
Yeah, I mentioned that. So, we've seen this really disturbing phenomenon of the university sort of taking shortcuts in their own processes, right, that allow them to kind of, prior to a hearing, revoke the student's access to the campus. The purpose of rules like that is when someone is a danger, right? We've had reporting of students credibly accused of sexual assault who have not been given that sort of consequence. But because these students have engaged in Palestine advocacy, they're using these mechanisms that are designed for a very different purpose to justify removing these students from campus. So we've had students that, prior to their disciplinary proceeding, get basically stay away orders, get kicked out of their housing, can't go to the dining hall, and if they're gone for long enough, really disrupts their financial aid, which could affect even if they ultimately, and they have ultimately been given things like probation in most cases, really affect their ability to return. So yeah, we have serious, due process concerns. Private university due process is obviously different than in a court, but these schools have policies and procedures that are being abused, we think, in order to justify removing these students from campus, I guess with the hope that things will calm down and when they return it won't happen, but of course we know that's not going to happen.
And a follow-up question. When a student goes to a university and pays money for access to facilities and they're denied access, have they not violated contractual obligation?
It's very possible. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the context, right? But yeah, I mean, the student code of conduct and these policies that govern the relationship between the student and the university are they're contracts, right? And so it's very possible that a particular student, if they had evidence of a particular sort of move, it would obviously be very. I'm a lawyer, so I have to give you the whole like it depends on the case. But yeah, theoretically, right, there could be serious contractual concerns that are governed by these processes that the school would be violating by taking these sort of shortcuts.
I'll just add to that as well that being denied access to educational resources on the basis of someone's national origin, race, shared ancestry is a violation of Title VI of the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964. And that would apply to a public university and a private university. So definitely there's a lot of procedural concerns that are being raised as such, but also when a university treats some group of students differently than others, kind of regardless of what the procedures are on the books, that raises some serious civil rights concerns, and that's being raised on a lot of different campuses.
Great. Any other questions? Then we appreciate everybody giving this issue their attention. It is important that we protect these students as they go back to school, and it is equally important that we hold university administrations accountable. One of my colleagues already noted, many of these universities celebrate their students' role in ending apartheid, and yet many of those same universities targeted students for their role in trying to end apartheid. One would hope those lessons have been learned. They apparently have not at several places of higher education, and we look forward to working to ensure that these students' voices are protected, and ultimately that the genocide, occupation, and apartheid that the Palestinian people face ends, and U.S. weapons that are being delivered to them, sometimes with the investment of places of higher education, stop. Thank you all for being here today. We appreciate it.